Have you ever heard about the remnants at the end of time? Probably not. These are not realms that any mortal, or even most of the gods, would have access to. This name belongs to the shattered timelines that are not quite destroyed, but are so close to complete collapse that they could fade into nothingness at any time. They are like the abandoned plumage of the temporal divine bird, left to rot like waste. Think about it. How many things would have to go so badly for all 18 universes for the timeline to be utterly unrecoverable? Nearly, but alas, stuck in limbo, hopeless, and slowly drifting toward a fate worse than death, being completely erased from the memory of every living being in the multiverse. There is one remnant that feels particularly eerie, as it only has one living inhabitant. Let's call him the Forgotten One. He will never be able to leave, as he has to atone for his sins. He is able to perceive many of the timelines outside of his prison, yet he knows that he is physically unable to leave. He also cannot die, as not only is he immortal, but his actions have also brought ruin to the afterlife itself. He had brought the end to 12 universes in his timeline, in a blind, zealous rage. And at the end of it all, instead of giving him release of simple erasure, the higher powers decided to lock him in so he could forever ponder his actions, never be free. It took him thousands of years, or maybe more, to realize what he had done. His anger turned to regret, his hatred warped into longing, and his mission revealed itself as pointless carnage. Even the immortal mind can cage itself when faced with a universe devoid of life and hope. And all the while, from his space behind all spaces, he could watch countless timelines bloom into life when the likes of his had failed. It just made him miss it even more. His actions had made him despise his own existence. But alas, after such long isolation, with only occasional guests, it was no longer a warm feeling. It was a cold, distant disdain, like everything had become these days to him. He even stopped counting the flow of time, as it was something merely abstract where he was. There were no days, no nights, only grayness, and the dim light of the few remaining stars that hadn't been annihilated in his wake. It wasn't even a trash heap of a multiverse, although once in a while something did fall down into it. It may have been an object, a part of a badly designed time machine, or even a living and breathing person. And while this place was his sole prison, those guests could not stay for long. They used to die rather quickly, actually. This place was really not meant for mortal beings. They were too fragile. Sometimes he would try to use their means of getting here to escape himself, only to discover that he was permanently bound to this place, to forever wonder about his misdeeds till the end of time itself. Finally, he started to help them, nurse them back to health, feed them, as he was capable of at least creating sustenance for the visitors, as he himself did not need such things anymore, and help them leave this dreadful place, because he couldn't. In the end, this is what he found most satisfying, as, by aiding them, he released a memory of his good deed to the outside world. At least somewhere out there, people would view him as a good person. He could witness the people that he had rescued live and thrive. The only way at least a part of him could leave this dreadful space was right there. One day, a very special person fell from the sky. Let's call him the Traveler. And the Forgotten One had his eyes on him for quite some time, as he was quite notorious in the multiverse. He had seen his face many times, associated him with different versions of events. In many cases, the differences were so minor that they melded into one. But the traveler wasn't like the other wearers of his face. The Forgotten One had seen a mission and zeal not unlike his own many years ago, as well as the pain of numerous failures. When he visited him, he was still relatively young, also extremely untrusting. It was hard to blame him. The Forgotten One's own face should not be a welcome sight for the traveler, but he quickly understood that his survival depended on the prisoner of the Remnant, and that he simply could not kill him. "Why are you even here in this dreadful place?" he asked him, when he finally accepted food from the Forgotten One. After a few days of near starvation, the traveler was devouring food like the primal animal he truly was. It wasn't always like this, but sadly, someone brought it to ruin. "Who was that?" The traveler raised an eyebrow. "Me." The younger of the men then went into a defensive position right next to the fireplace. He was ready for an attack. "Fear not, as it was a long time ago. I once had a plan that turned out to be flawed. What I considered to be the blight of the multiverse turned out to be its lifeblood. I turned against everything and was punished for it. You destroyed the entire life in your universe?" "All the universes in this timeline, I'm afraid," he whispered with a sad smile, his now gruff voice turning on himself. "Turns out the only flaw was me." "And who punished you then?" Forgotten One didn't respond. He just looked up to the sky, with the few remaining stars glowing in the distance. "There must be someone really powerful if they managed to keep you here." "Always was. Always will be." "So, why haven't they fixed it? All of that?" The traveler seemed confused. The Forgotten One shrugged. "I do not know. I questioned the universe once. That's what it brought to me. Nothing." The traveler shook his fist. "Punishment won't bring anyone back." "I did try to bring things back. There was a time when I had limited power over life, but not anymore." "Then the gods that did it to you are truly uncaring about mortal life. They are only angry at you because you defied them." The first time in a long, long time, the Forgotten One was surprised. "How did you know that it was the gods who punished me?" "Because gods have a weird habit of abandoning you when you need them the most." They didn't speak for a while, as the traveler was still devouring the food that had been created for him, though he did manage to compose himself for a moment when he was offered some tea. It was a little sentimental thing that the Forgotten One used to do, even for himself from time to time. "The gods are many things, but like everyone, they are also flawed." He touched his ear. The traveler said nothing for a moment, and the prisoner used this moment to ask him a question. "Are you running away from home?" "I'm looking for a solution to free my home from what it became." "And if it's just like here? If there's no solution?" Then I'll knock on the door of whoever locked you in here and demand that they do something about it. My world! I'm pretty sure someone can." The Forgotten One smirked. "I like your spirit. You're so far away from home, or, for that matter, hope. Yet you aren't truly beaten. What fueled you, young one? Faith in your friends or family? Righteousness? All my friends are dead. My family has failed. All the rules have proven to be insufficient. Only revenge." The younger man answered in a tired yet pretty confident tone. "Be careful. Revenge can also be a powerful poison." "It's the only poison I have." "I admit, it is hard to get you down. I've been watching you for quite a while." "You've been watching me?" This time it was the traveler who was rather shocked by this revelation. "What else did you see?" "I can perceive a lot of different timelines from here, but I can never interfere. It's like looking at the world through a solid glass window." "Can you tell me about some things you see? To pass the time?" The Forgotten One was astonished by that request, but also quite pleased. It was the first warm feeling he had felt in a very, very long time. "Listen carefully." He told him the story of a warrior who had had much more battles than were written for him. He remembered the tale in which the ground wasn't giving birth to the life-giving seeds. He had a small memory of the world in which the boy and the girl never met, and their fates never collided. He reminded him of a story of two halves that became whole in earlier, easier times. When he was about to go to sleep, he let his imagination run with the tale of the legend being awakened years before it was prophesied. The next morning, he took a long time telling the tale of a brother who was given a second chance. It seemed as he had a particular sentiment toward that particular one. They took a moment to bitterly laugh at a fallen prince, killed by an unfortunate accident. He even started to tell him the story of a boy who traveled too far and could not return home. But he was afraid that this one would hit the traveler too close to home. It did. He helped him leave this place because he knew that it was not a good place for a person like him. Travelers had to travel. At first, he saw that his new friend was fascinated by the brave new worlds that he had discovered. There was some childlike wonder at how vast the multiverse was, but the taste of the journey was spoiled by the forces that were following him at the time. Also, at some point, the traveler started to feel that once you see one timeline, it's like you've seen them all. Yet, after months, maybe years, he returned for even more stories. Now that's strange. Not many travelers actually would return, but the Forgotten One complied. There was also a tale of the world in which you could not revert the inevitable with a mere wish. He hoped the traveler would take something about that to very much heart. He also lectured him about the threat of the one wanting power prematurely. He opened some old wounds, telling the story of someone wearing the face of the traveler's old friend and surviving in a world parallel to his own. He also told him a lot about fusion, a topic that he had known about from his own experience, and the experiences of two warriors who had permanently connected their fates. There was also the cautionary tale of one trick changing the entire fate of the universe by putting it closer than ever before. He left the Forgotten One again, promising to return once more. This had been something that the prisoner felt very fond of. Their talks, all the stories he could show and tell him, and maybe they might be relayed to other people. The next time the traveler visited, he was different, angrier. He demanded something from him, something that he had never given to anyone, knowing that it would cause only problems if he did. When the traveler started to feel treated unjustly by fate, he told him what had happened to someone who accepted the praise for his own brave deeds, only to regret it later. He started to tell him about the worlds that were intact without his intervention, and that there was hope outside of his scope. He felt that his old friend was sensing as if the entire multiverse could rest on his shoulders, or at least that his timeline was more important than the others. There was a world when the boy and the girl connected, not as friends, but as lovers. But this one only angered the traveler. He also told him of the world when no one wearing a traveler's face was born. And yet, the fate of keeping it intact had fallen on the shoulders of the most unlikely hero, who, in normal circumstances, would end up killed by his annoyed master. But the traveler lost that curious spark in his eyes that he had once had. He did not understand the purpose of that tale. Instead, he took the only thing that the Forgotten One had never intended to give him, but he also did stop it from being taken away. It was a dangerous item that could cause a lot of problems in the wrong hands, but it was also unreliable. But still, the traveler came to visit from time to time, but with every visit, the angry youngster who wanted to change the world was losing that spirit. It was fading away. Instead, a grizzled old veteran was forming. He was both fascinating and terrifying to the Forgotten One, but he had nothing to lose. He was still telling him the stories, but right now, it felt more like field reports. He was enamored with those stories, but this enamorment was also causing a hunger. By the time of their latest visit, the Forgotten One finally asked him a question. Do you think you can change anything? That my knowledge can help you revert what cannot be reverted, traveler? Don't call me that. So what should I call you now, then? The Forgotten One seemed surprised. Nomad. the grizzled old man said. What's the difference? The traveler wanders for the sake of travel. My journeys are organized and have a purpose. It was at this time that the Forgotten One realized that the transition was complete. Everything that was left of Traveler was gone. This boy, whom he saved from starvation years ago, truly was dead. And the Forgotten One was both excited and terrified to see what this new person had in store for the future.